Aira presents a conversation with John Herzog, Accessibility Solutions Engineer with AT&T, a Blind Abilities production.
Hello everybody, my name is John Herzog. I'm currently an Accessibility Solutions Engineer with AT&T. I'm 33 years old and have been blind since birth. It was kind of a winding path to get here to AT&T. First of all, what I do is, as of late, I've been working on the accessibility of DirecTV. We just launched accessible applications on iPhone and Android devices. We've also launched a talking guide, which is a feature on our newest DVR boxes that allows a blind person to use their remote control and receive feedback as they're channel surfing or viewing the TV guide or even turning on video description. They get auditory feedback. Now, the way I got here was I ultimately went to college at the University of Illinois, double majored in speech communications and history, and then went to law school at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And that was a very interesting experience for a couple of reasons, because I went from having a resource center in college where everything was scanned and converted for me to needing to understand how to scan my own materials in law school so that I could have them in a timely fashion. It also was interesting because the LSAT test, which is the entrance examination into law school, was not the most accessible thing. I had to figure out, for example, you have a section where you need a diagram, because you have about 9 different variables, and they say, variable A cannot be next to E is allergic to D, and D can't sit next to C or B. What are the other combinations you can have? So that was kind of an interesting thing. But anyway, to get back onto the story, I went to law school. Initially, I thought I was going to be doing property law because one of my internships was with a gas and oil lawyer doing eminent domain work. But then I didn't really have a job lined up after my third year of law school. So one of my friends was an ex-computer programmer from Microsoft, and he knew about an internship at the Federal Communications Commission. And he said, hey John, these folks, they want to know about accessible devices for people with disabilities. You should apply for that job. And at first I just kind of laughed him off. I was like, accessibility work, I don't really want to do that. I've got a law degree and I want to do, legal work. But nothing panned out, and so I ended up giving the FCC a call, and they said, we need someone who has gone through a law degree and whatever, but we also need someone who's a user of assistive technology. And that kind of plays into what I was saying earlier about, needing to learn how to scan and getting really familiar with a whole bunch of different screen readers and things to be effective in law school. And I said, okay, I'll go ahead and apply. So at the time, this was about 2011, the Federal Communications Commission was drafting regulations about accessible televisions and devices, including web browsers on mobile phones. They asked me to be part of committees for drafting those rules and regulations as kind of an advisory, person for the Federal Communications Commission. And so I got to see, what the industry was looking for and what blind consumers were looking for. And in about 2 years, I was approached by a member of AT&T with an opportunity for a job as an accessibility solutions engineer. And the idea is that I would be testing to make sure that AT&T's apps and services were compatible and compliant with the regulations that I just helped the FCC write. So I've been working as an accessibility solutions engineer with AT&T since 2013, and part of my motivation for switching jobs was that there was a government furlough going into effect, and my job was only temporary, and unfortunately the furlough messed up any opportunity I had of making the job permanent. So I went with AT&T, and then after the DirecTV merger in 2015, I started working with them to help them enhance their accessibility. A bit of a long and winding story there, but that's how I got to where I am. When you're in college, there's no real direct way to get into law. The idea is you want to major in something that you're really interested in. My background was in speech communication, but you might also want a background in engineering, because it's a very logical background, or political science. Speech comm, political science, and engineering are the 3 most common majors if you're interested in law. But a lot of people will tell you, and a lot of advisors will tell you, that your undergrad major is not as important as how well you do in it. Law school is a whole different animal in and of itself. The other thing I would say, try to relax and try to enjoy yourself as you transition. I know it's going to be nerve-wracking because there's a whole lot you have to keep in mind. How am I going to travel to classes every day? What technology do I need? But part of the process is really giving yourself the space to explore and to try new things and see what works for you and what doesn't. One of the risks that you run as a blind student is one that I fell into, where you start taking yourself too seriously, because you believe that if you make an error or a mistake, then the consequences could be truly devastating. And the truth is, in college, you do still have some leeway. You do still have some time to try and iron out the kinks in your systems. And so you want to be well-versed in travel skills and technology skills and social skills, but you also want to be approachable and sociable and just have a good sense of humor. And sometimes that involves just winging it, right? There are some classes you're going to be in where you may not have the materials in time to get them brailled. And so then you just kind of wing it and ask somebody next to you. Or in my case, socially, I decided to wing it. I decided to join a fraternity. So I was a member of the Zeta Psi fraternity in college. There were some instances where, things weren't always very conducive to making them accessible, but you just kind of go with the flow and do the best you can at the time. For example, we used to have a game called Bags, where we would tailgate at football games, and there was a game called Bags where you'd have a team of 2 or 3 people, and you're standing next to this target, basically, that is a slanted wood board, and it has a hole in the middle of it. And your job is to throw your beanbags at the other team's target. And depending on where you hit or how you hit the target, you get a certain number of points. Well, that didn't really lend itself to accessibility. So what I did is I had somebody tap on the target, then move out of the way, and I would then know where to throw my beanbags at. What I'm trying to say is it's a lot of, outside of the classroom is a lot of creative thinking. And you have to be even more creative to think about how to make it accessible in a way that doesn't make people intimidated or that doesn't turn them off, if that makes sense. I've always had a sort of a sense of adventure. So, in high school, I was a wrestler. That was a very interesting experience. I basically had to figure out where my opponents were and what moves they were doing by having the moves done to me, and then having somebody demonstrate how to do them by being very descriptive. Okay, first you put your right hand here, your left hand there, and then, you push to your right or to your left, et cetera, et cetera. I played beep baseball for a while. I was a member of the Chicago Comets beep baseball team. In recent years, that sense of adventure has led me to do some interesting things like go parasailing, which is a neat kind of experience. I'm not yet an Aira subscriber, but one of the things that I think Aira might be very beneficial in doing is I'm in the Los Angeles area now, and there's a lot of hiking and biking trails and things. And might be interested in go and take a hike somewhere and get some feedback about what the terrain is like ahead of me, what the trail is looking like, and where I might need to make upcoming turns and things. Because as you know, that's not always conducive to using a cane. In addition to being a bit of an athlete, I just like to try new things. So a few years ago, I was given the opportunity to do some indoor skydiving. That was kind of a cool thing because you had an instructor that went in with you, and basically you devised a tap system with him. He would fly ahead of you, if you will, or above you, and he would tap on your leg or your arm to kind of show you or instruct you how to adjust your position. So he would tap twice. That would be like expand your leg or stretch out your leg. Tap once, contract your leg or like bend your knee. And this whole time you're in like a bodysuit. So that was a pretty cool experience. Honestly, I think this is a really cool time because narrator is improving in leaps and bounds on the PC. VoiceOver is very robust on the Mac. So I use them both and like them both. I have both. So as an engineer, I have to know and use both. Although I have to say the slight edge goes to PC because I'm a gamer, and there are a lot more games on PC than there are Mac. I play the accessible games like Top Speed Racing, GMA Tank Commander. I play some of the more modern games, but I also, growing up, I was able to play some Nintendo, some Super Nintendo games, and I get together with friends occasionally and we play those. And those were cool because back in the day, you could hear the different sounds and play them by timing. So for example, my brother and I played a really great game called Super Bases Loaded, where if he told you that he was going to throw you a fastball or a slow ball, you could hear the pitch being thrown, and then you would know when to swing the bat. And since the fielding was done automatically, it would make a noise, and you could judge based on how long it took them to pick up the ball, whether the guy was on first, second, third, or heading into home. And so you could throw to the bases, and I won a good number of games. And it got even more exciting because in the PlayStation era, you had NBA Shootout and you had Triple Play 99, and so you could kind of hear the game sound and hear the commentator sound, and by knowing what buttons did what, you could actually play the games. Now, it wouldn't always be competitive with the really good sighted players, but it was at least good enough to, to play over a beer with friends, or it was at least good enough to be able to, play with another friend as you pass the time. And so that was really cool. So both accessible games and quote unquote mainstream games are what I like to play. The way that Aira works is the Aira service requires 3 things to work, essentially, and 4 to make it convenient. So it requires your smartphone. Your smartphone can be on any carrier. It requires the Aira glasses and then a MiFi. So it's a little portable Wi-Fi hotspot that your Aira glasses connect to. And that hotspot is sponsored by AT&T. The hotspot uses the AT&T network. I know that Aira users don't have to pay for that hotspot. It's part of the Aira package that they subscribe to. The reason why the glasses connect to the AT&T Wi-Fi hotspot is so that when they're delivering video from your location back to the Aira agent, it's done with as little delay as possible. Aira's using a technique known as network prioritization. And the way that works is it basically sends the video data across the network as high priority so that it doesn't get delayed and it doesn't get held up. That way, when you're walking around, you get information as close to near real time as you can. And the way that it works, let's say that you're not an AT&T smartphone customer. You basically call Aira on your smartphone, but the video from the glasses still goes through the AT&T MiFi. They don't use their own data and they don't use their smartphone minutes. I had the good fortune to use Aira last night to go get a cup of coffee from my hotel room. It was interesting to have an agent tell you in real time what she was looking at and to tell you which turns to make. Certainly very helpful, but it also posed some rather interesting challenges that I hadn't thought of. For example, I ran into somebody who saw my badge and he wanted to start talking to me, but I was also hearing the agent talk at the same time, and I knew that because I was wearing the headphones, she would hear anything I said. And so I had a momentary brain freeze there where I was kind of like, okay, well, how do I distinguish who I want to talk to? My agent versus the person who wants to talk about, AT&T, and I've been a customer for 21 years, et cetera, et cetera. And so that I hadn't thought of, and I was like, oh, well, that's very interesting. The other thing that I wonder is, much to Aira's good service, it was quite obviously a noisy exhibit hall and a noisy hotel. And one of the things that I thought is, even in airports or even in malls, it's not going to be this magnitude of noise. And so Aira would be able to provide a good amount of input, even in less noisy circumstances. And so I was like, well, this is kind of trial by fire. It's cool that I'm able to get as much info as I am even here. The other thing that I was thinking, though, as I was using it is, okay, well, how fast do I walk, right? Because, the agent is supposedly getting video real time, but what does that mean? Like how fast am I supposed to move with Aira? So it was a very interesting experience, and it certainly answered a lot of questions, and interestingly, it posed a whole lot of new ones. I'm not insinuating that it's a bad thing, it's just a very interesting thing. One of the things with using Aira is it might help with the sense of adventure. I mean, one of the things that blind people have not traditionally done a lot of, and one of the things that I've even gotten a little bit scared of in recent years, scared is the wrong word, but a little bit hesitant to do, I'm in a new city. I've moved out to the Los Angeles area in the past 7 months or so. And one of the things that I've heard is, there's a lot of neat neighborhoods in Los Angeles, restaurants, and a lot of cool things to go do. But because it is Los Angeles and a really big city, and because I am there alone as a single guy, I've been a little hesitant to try and explore the city just because I know you can go from a very good neighborhood to a not so great neighborhood in a matter of blocks. And so my question comes up of, personal safety, like, okay, where am I exactly? I can see that Aira might be good in cases where you want to explore. It could also be good in cases where, I was invited, for example, to take a tour of LA with a group, and there was somebody who I found very interesting and wanted to talk to a little bit more at the restaurant afterward. But because of, needing to follow the group into the restaurant, I was basically bringing up the rear. And by the time I got to the table, everybody else sat down, and I was basically forced to take the only remaining chair. It would be neat if I used Aira and I could say, hey, where are some open chairs? Where is this person sitting? I want to try and sit next to them, type of thing. Because I don't know about you guys, but that's one of those things where you kind of want to ask where people are and where, how to sit next to them. But when you're in a group of other sighted people, you don't want to be too obvious about it, because then it kind of seems like, oh, I don't like other people, or, oh, am I being too awkward about this? What if those seats are taken, type of thing, It's just a normal thing. People see who they want to talk to, and they move over to them and they sit by them. And that traditionally has not been something that you could very easily do. And it's not a bad thing to be able to have that option. In fact, it eliminates a lot of the awkwardness of that. When you're in a group of young professionals, or you're in a group with a person that you might want to date, it looks a lot more independent to be able to just move with grace around the tables and chairs. It's not you need help type of thing. Because there's nothing that kills chemistry faster than, oh, gee, I need help with all this kind of stuff. If nothing else, it kills your own confidence, right? How am I supposed to look confident and suave and everything as a male if I'm always needing help everywhere? That's not a really good image, And sure, some of that is self-confidence, some of that is self-doubt and things, but, let's face it, independence is a very desirable trait. It's something that people want in others, right? So, that's a potential. And I should say, some of this, to be fair, is a little bit of speculation on my part, because I'm not currently an Aira user, but I have had the good fortune to experience it a time or two. And these are certainly things that I'm thinking and considering as I'm contemplating whether or not I'm going to sign up for it. One of the encouraging signs is implementing AI, artificial intelligence. So if you wanted to scan and read something, you could do that. You could scan and read something like, the KNFB reader does right now, and you wouldn't need to have an agent for everything. The most encouraging thing I've heard so far is, in my apartment, the MiFi signal is not particularly strong. And so my concern was, well, if I have these Aira glasses and I need to connect to this MiFi hotspot, but I can't get a signal because I'm, below 3 floors of concrete, how useful are those glasses going to be? One of the things that I was told is you can actually connect the glasses to your home Wi-Fi network. And so that provides you that stable signal. I have a brand new Roku TV. I was trying to activate a channel on it, and that requires an activation code that you type from your TV screen to your computer. And obviously, Roku, I'm not trying to do a plug for them, but they do have some accessibility built in. But, it doesn't read all of the codes that you need. And so I was able to call up an Aira agent and say, what is this code? I was able to type that in and then gain access to all the video content that I wanted. It was a neat thing. When it comes to making things accessible that were not designed to be accessible, sometimes you just have to be a creative thinker. That's when your friends come in, that's where you come in, and that's where rolling with the flow comes in. So sometimes you may do something and it may not be fully accessible, but you go and you do it anyway just to be with the company, or you do it anyway just because something is better than nothing. It's funny because, when you talk about blindness, my answer to that question of, how has blindness shaped you, or what is blindness? My expression is rather flippant, and it is what it is. It's neither good nor bad. It's neither positive nor negative. It just is. We get to choose moment by moment what we make of it. And sometimes that's easier said than done, but it reminds me that I am making a whole series of choices that affect my outcomes. That's one of the main reasons it doesn't allow me to sink into autopilot. It forces me to choose in the moment, okay, does it make sense to do this? Does it make sense to try this? Or does it not make sense to try this? I'm an exhibitor, so I've gotten the chance to talk with a lot of people and answer a lot of questions about TV. It really is a burgeoning field. There's a lot of programs now that are being audio described. So it's really cool being able to show people not only that there is a lot of stuff to watch, but that there's an accessible way to watch it. I've also been able to walk around and explore some of the other exhibits in the hall, and I think it's very innovative, the technology, and encouraging that we're seeing so many different partners in the exhibit hall. I've not been able to attend any of the seminars at large, and that's because I'm not really here on my personal time. I'm here on behalf of AT&T. I'll probably at some point come back at a different time to a convention and go with the purpose of attending the seminars.
Be sure to check out Aira on the web at www.aira.io, on Twitter at AIRAIO. This was a Blind Abilities production. Check out Blind Abilities on the web at www.blindabilities.com or on Twitter at blindabilities, or download our free app from the App Store. That's Blind Abilities, 2 words. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great day.